One of the best things I can tell you when you have to approach people with bad news is to put yourself on the other side of the table.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
Another mini-sode for you today, folks. Dustin Harris hanging out in the podcast chair, the most listened to Appraiser podcast in the world. Hang tight, folks. We're going to talk today about breaking hard news and how to do it. I want to pause here and remind you that we're sponsored by ANOW Software. ANOW is the software that I use daily to keep me up to date on what's going on in my appraisal office. You should be as well. It's ANOW.com. That's ANOW.com. Well, folks, if you have employees, if you have contractors, if you deal and work with other people, and who doesn't, right? Realtors, lenders, clients, we all work with individual homeowners. We had one of those calls today from an angry homeowner, very, very upset that the appraiser had left the exhaust fan on in the bathroom. No, he didn't use the bathroom. He just was checking to make sure the electricity worked. Oh boy. I want to talk today about breaking hard news because we need to do that on a regular basis, folks. And it's not easy. And some of us avoid it. In fact, I see this happen very, very often. I see it happen where hard news needs to be broken, needs to be shared. And because we are avert to doing it, we just don't do it. And I see things become problems, minor things become problems because we are afraid to do what we need to do. Now, folks, if you have employees, this is one of the things, it's one of the habits that I see many of my coaching clients do, where they need to say something to somebody. And because it's a difficult, hard conversation to have, they just don't. They avoid it and they hope it goes away. And guess what? It doesn't usually go away. And then it becomes a bigger and bigger problem. They call that making mountains out of molehills, right? The molehills there, stomp it off, get it done, move on. Just open your mouth, get it done, and don't let it become a big problem. Well, folks, how do you break this hard news? I'm going to show you a thing that you can do, a trick, if you will. I hate to call it a trick because it's just a skill, it's a communication skill that I'm going to share with you after the break. But first, I want to pause here and remind you that we're sponsored by ANOW Software. Just this morning, I jumped on ANOW Software. I had a report that was being worked on. One of my write-up people were in the midst of it and had a question about 3 parcels in one, and do we need to do them all, and are they connected? And you know what? The easiest, fastest way for me to find an answer to that question was to jump on ANOW Software. On my phone, on the app, I pulled up the files, and sure enough, we keep all of our work files right there in ANOW. I simply had to start typing the address, 123 Any. Oh, there it is, 123 Any Street. Click on it. Scroll down, hit the files. Oh, yep, there we go. Let's look at it. Plat maps there. Yep, this is my answer. Literally, folks, I had the answer in about, 3 minutes. That's what ANOW will do for you, among other things. Check them out. Go to ANOW.com, ANOW.com. All right, my good friends, we are back and we are talking about bad news. We're talking about breaking bad news. We're not talking about breaking bad. We're talking about breaking hard news, difficult things that we need to talk about. I want to talk about this in the realm of human resources. You as the boss, the individual who the buck stops here, maybe you're presented with a problem. Maybe you have an issue and one of your employees is just not performing well. We had a situation recently where we had put one of our employees in a position that was needed. It was a hole that needed to be filled, and that person was there to fill that hole. Well, guess what, folks? It was not working out very well, and it became very obvious in the first couple of weeks that it was not. Now, there were specific things, and I won't go into those for confidentiality matters, but there were specific things that were happening that were not good. And I was tasked, of course, with approaching this individual with the hard news. Now, the hard news was that we were going to move him. I'm going to say him, it may be him or her. We needed to move him from one position to another. I call that getting people on the right seats on the bus. Actually, it's a Jim Collins analogy. You know, good to great, that Jim Collins. But you get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, the right people on the right seats on the bus. And this was a situation where this individual was not in the right seat. Now, for hypothetical, let's just throw out a completely, this was not the situation. But again, for confidentiality, let's just say this individual was in customer service, and it was very obvious that this person was not doing very well on customer service. He was not treating the customers right. They were having challenges. He was lying to them, trying to, pretend to be somebody he wasn't, whatever the case may be, right? But it was very clear that this person was not working out in customer service. Now, there's one way to approach this that's the wrong way, and that is, hey, you're doing this wrong, do better. Now, that's probably, again, not the approach that I would take with most individuals. With this individual specifically, let's say that I come to that person and say, hey, George, we'll call him George, talk to me. What's going on? How are things? We put you in this customer service role. Tell me what's going right. Tell me what maybe isn't going right. We have this conversation, and all of a sudden, guess what? George brings up the very problems that I knew was a problem. Isn't it amazing how our employees often know what it is that they're doing wrong before we even tell them? We just need to give them an opportunity to open up and talk about it. But here's where the principle comes in today. Instead of talking about what a crappy job George was doing on the phones, why not reframe? I'm not talking about spin. I'm not talking about lying. I'm not talking about deception. I'm not talking about morality here. I'm talking about reframing the problem. We all know there's a problem. George knows there's a problem. I know there's a problem. Everybody in the office knows there's a problem. My homeowners and point of contacts and realtors and lenders and clients and everything else knows there's a problem, right? We've got a problem, and everybody's pretty aware of what the problem is. Rather than saying, hey, George, we got a problem, what about saying this? Again, starting out with a conversation, how are things going? George all of a sudden brings up the problem. And then I can turn that and say, you know what, George, I think your talents might lie elsewhere. Why don't we talk about where that might be? Where would you be if you wanted to pick anything in this company? Well, maybe that's not necessarily an option, but we can still talk about it. Hey, George, how would you feel about data entry? How would you feel about not having to talk to people? How would you feel about having the flexibility to work off of 2 monitors and grab data from one and put it into another and do some research and solve problems that way? Oh, you would? Great. All of a sudden, a problem becomes a positive. Next time you are faced with a problem, next time you feel like you have to break hard news to someone, step back for just a moment. Don't just count to 10, but really look at every aspect. How can I best approach this? One of the best things I can tell you when you have to approach people with bad news is to put yourself on the other side of the table. In other words, put yourself in their moccasins. Sit there and say, how would I want my boss to approach this problem? Folks, these are the kind of things that we talk about frequently in the All-Star team, and we are revamping. The All-Star team is becoming bigger and better and awesome. We've got 200 plus people in there these days, and every month we meet together for a live interactive meeting where you learn these kinds of things, where you learn how to run your appraisal office and be the best boss ever. Check us out. Go to theappraisercoach.com and click on memberships.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.